Very glad that he has agreed. Usually he will do a blackboard talk, or I should say a whiteboard talk, which is fascinating to watch because he just comes in prepared with some of the outlines, and as the conversations go, he kind of, uh, uses that as clues to kind of plan the talk, and it is just, it's an extremely engaging session, but we will do the next best thing. So he has kind of put in efforts, prepared this deck, and so I will invite Puneet to kind of get ahead with the talk, and please feel free to kind of ask him any questions, and we can kind of follow up with some of the sessions with Puneet as well. So over to you, Puneet, and thank you so much for this time with us.
Thank you so much, Jaya. I think I'm hoping that I will be able to live up to the introduction. I think the best for this session will really be if you ask me a lot of questions. Like Jaya said, that what I really like to do is to come on a whiteboard, because this session is not about what I came to present. This session is much more about what you would like to know and how could this session be useful for you in your journey in terms of raising resources. So stop me anytime. The more we speak, I can tell you, the more rich this session will be. I can assure you that there are no stupid questions. There are no silly questions. Any question that you have in mind, I can actually guarantee that 10 other people have the same question in their mind. It's just that everybody's too scared to raise their hand. But think of this as a safe space. Please feel free to ask any question. Even the slightest of doubt that you may have will be extremely, extremely helpful. So that's basically what I wanted to kind of start with as a request. Would be great if you could switch on your videos. Always good to be able to look into your eyes as well. It gives me a lot of visual cues as to.
Well, I agree, Puneet. Whoever can, if it doesn't affect your bandwidth that much, please at least try to leave your video on for some time, because like Puneet rightly said, it's good to kind of at least see who's present. So just a request from our end, please leave your video on whenever possible. Sorry, Puneet, please go ahead.
No, thank you so much. It really helps if I can look in the eyes, and it always helps me orient my session well. Otherwise, it could tend to become a monologue sometimes. I'm hoping that you can see my presentation screen. Is it visible? Wonderful. So moving on, I think this topic is something that we all know is extremely important. The topic that I'm going to be talking about today is raising resources. Most people talk about it as raising equity. And I can tell you that it's important only for one reason. And that reason is that without money, you cannot really build a business. To hire people, to be able to buy material, you need resources. One would actually hope that you never have to raise resources at all, because your energies are much better spent on running your own business than to think about raising money. But unfortunately, that's not really the case. Now, before I even get into fundraising, I actually want to start off with a situation to tell you what are some of the important things here. And I'm not trying to scare you here, honestly, but I can tell you that equity raise is hard. There is just no easy way to raise money. And if you think that other people get it easy, they don't. The only difference really might be the fact that they're actually doing this a lot more than you are. Or their business is at a slightly different level from yours. But I can tell you equity raise is always difficult. I have raised well over 1,000 crores plus, maybe even, no, actually more than that, 1,500 crore plus as equity in my different roles. And I can tell you the next check of 100 crores that I'm trying to raise is going to be as difficult as my first check that I tried to raise. There is just never an easy situation. And if I were to talk about the situation right now, this is by far the worst of situations. The pandemic has become another reason for people to be able to look at equity raise. A lot of investors will tell you that Indian economy is not growing, it's actually degrowing, and it is shrunk by 25%. There are lots and lots of issues. And in this particular scenario, can we actually give you any money at all? But I can tell you, if this was not the pandemic, it would have been something else. The point is, there will be a million reasons because of which an investor will not want to invest in you. And there is only one reason, which is basically your hard work and your dedication, which will get an investor to come into your companies. So at the end of the day, it is actually hard work. The second thing that I would like to say is that it's hard work. At the same time, it is extremely, extremely expensive. Um, it's expensive because you're giving away a part of your share of the company. You're basically giving away 20%, 30% of your companies to people who come in and put in cash. That itself is expensive. But more importantly, the kind of time that a founder needs to invest into equity raise is huge. I can tell you that during equity raise times, I am actually spending as much as 80-85% of my time in equity raise. And once the term sheet is signed, I am practically spending more than 100% of my time. My work days increase from 13, 14 hours a day to as much as sometimes 20 hours on a trot. Uh, and the point is that this is something which is pretty normal and all of us have to just completely live up to it. Now, yes, I have always been fortunate that I have never set up a business on my own. I have always had a strong co-founder. And the way we've gone about it is to make sure that my co-founder runs all the business, is responsible for all sales, all marketing, all operations. Um, and I can then therefore come out completely and just start to focus on raising resources. But for a single founder, this could become really, really distracting. Uh, it's also expensive because you start to defocus on your customers, products, and employees, and you actually are focusing on the equity raise process. And I can tell you, the worst thing that you as a founder can do is to focus away from your customer and your products. So it is really, really expensive. Some of you, and thankfully that's not the case in our situation, I can actually practically end up giving out my user manuals, my product manuals, everything under the sun. The value of my business comes from execution. I bring no IP at all. Finance business typically is such where every product, every structure is copied by all banks very quickly. Any home loan, any auto loan, any two-wheeler loan, any saving solution, any mutual fund design, you will find is offered by 20 other players in the market. So finance is not an IP-led business, but several of you and I have kind of worked with a few of you to kind of look at your businesses. Some of you have a very, very strong IP-based business. Your IP is out, practically everything is out. And therefore you have to realize that in all of this there is just no confidentiality. The confidentiality agreements that your investors will sign with you are typically going to be so weak that they actually mean nothing at all. And what you will be expected to give out will be details of your IP, customer list, your pipeline, your details of revenue, your unit economics, your key suppliers, your key people list. Every single thing that you hold dear to you will be asked as a part of diligence. Actually, a lot of investors will not even do it as a part of diligence. Sometimes they will do it as a part of the first set of conversations itself. Um, and therefore, what you have to think about is how important is that to you, and that itself is a big challenge. Um, the important thing that you have to also realize is money is just not money here. In a normal situation, when you take 1,000 rupees, you've taken 1,000 rupees. When you get into an equity investment, 1,000 rupees is just not 1,000 rupees. 1,000 rupees is also an invitation to somebody else to become a co-owner with you. And I've often said this, this is one of my kind of favorite lines as well as a big concerns, is that it's actually easy to get out of a bad marriage, but you can't get out of a bad investment. It's just not possible. Here, the alimony is basically losing your entire business. And it's not even that you can lose your business and go and start up a new one, because typically your equity investments will say that you have non-competes for at least 3 years. So it's not even that you can tell them, please keep this, I will go and set up something of my own. That will never happen. For 3 years, at least you will be barred from doing it. And you'll be lucky if it's 3 years. If you read the agreements that you will typically end up signing, and if you have not given attention to it, it might be for eternity. Uh, so money is just not money here. You have to be very careful about who do you bring into the picture, what kind of governance related issues come into picture. There could also be potential changes in business directions. Your investor might think that what you're doing is just never going to make money, and therefore you should do something which is completely different. what you decided to build your company for, what your passion was, you could be completely turned around on that. And I know some of the founders here have a very strong belief about what they want to do. And I can see the team from Vayu Shastra here. The kind of work that they're doing is absolutely fantastic. And think about somebody who comes in, tells them that in order to make money, you just need to completely reorient your work and business so that we can actually start to pitch to the most expensive schools, which will actually enjoy aerospace modeling and aerospace classes, and we can charge 10,000 rupees per class. And that should be our primary focus. It actually, yes, it is still talking about aerospace and all of the work that is interesting, but you've actually taken it from everybody to a very small group of people who could have anyway paid and gotten this kind. So a lot of the work that can happen with an investor could just completely change the direction of your business. And you have to be very careful about who and what kind of rights do you end up giving. And then the last thing, you need the right set of bankers. I can tell you a lot of people here in this group might actually believe that they don't need bankers or they can't afford bankers. But I can tell you what you can't afford is taking and stepping out of your business to be able to do equity raise full time without taking a banker. The small amount of money that you'll pay to the banker is worth the time that you invest in building your own business. They will also bring you a lot of relationships. It's actually not a bad idea to go with a banker. I can also tell you that the banker does not do a lot of work in the but some kind of preparation, some kind of mock test, some kind of checkup before you do, some kind of readiness is something that they'll help you with. And that itself is going to save at least 20 to 30% of your time, and which is quite substantial. Uh, so this is just around an overview of equity raise. I don't mean to scare you, but I'm sure all of you know this really well. But as we start to get into an equity raise, I think these are important things for all of us to know. Let me stop here if you have any questions, but also my request is if you have any thoughts, raise hands, post it on a chat. Given the fact that I'm presenting, I won't be able to see the chat, but I'll request Jaya to kind of perhaps alert me if there's a message on the chat here.
Sure.
But any question that you have at this point will be really helpful.
This is Thiru here. What do you mean by bankers actually? Investment bankers?
So by bankers, I basically mean people who help in equity raise. There are a lot of investment banks which actually help you raise money. And they're available at different, they're basically, you'll have to choose a different banker for different stages of life. But these are people who can help you meet a lot of investors. They can also help you put together your pitch deck. They can also help you refine your business plan. And they can also help you set up the basics of due diligence. So that's typically what a banker would do for you in this regard.
So these are investment consultants, or you mean say bankers means like ICICI Bank, Axis Bank?
No. So they're not like ICICI. They are like consultants. But the term that is typically used for them is called investment bankers. They are the ones who will help you find investors.
Hi.
Go ahead, Santosh.
Hi. Good evening, sir. Just want to ask, is the fundraise and equity raise possible at the start of a business, as in like in the concept stage?
Absolutely, Santosh. So the point is, right, that's while it's hard, but everything is possible. At the end of the day, if you can convince somebody to say that your idea is really valuable, you will have people who will back you. So for example, Cred raised its first check before they had anything on the ground. The moment, or Jupiter for that matter, when Jupiter set up their business, they had nothing on the ground. They actually raised all the money prior to setting anything on the ground. But the point is, both Cred and Jupiter founders came with a very good pedigree. They had already set up very successful businesses. One had, I think, set up Freecharge in the past. So they'd actually set up pretty successful businesses. and therefore they had the credibility to go to the market and say that, well, this idea is something that I can make too. So it's possible, but I can tell you that it takes conviction of an investor to write a check. So either you have a great idea or you have a great founding team which actually gets that to work. Even in our case, we managed to raise the money even before we had started operations. Our first check actually came before we had, no, not before, just after we had the first customer on.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Go ahead, Santosh.
Yeah. So in that case, a founder with the founding concept is approached by a company who is interested to invest in that. Is there any bandwidth number? Would you say that it's okay to dilute, or is it okay to look at a partnership equity on that?
So Santosh, let me get there. This is a part of my presentation. So I want to get to that kind of a targeted dilution at different stages. So I'm going to talk about that a little.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question here. So you are saying about confidentiality will be breached when we are going to investors and all. But there is also another side to the bankers, right? How we are going to ensure that bankers will not breach the confidentiality?
No. I am basically saying your confidentiality is breached the moment you're going to raise equity. So whether it's with a banker, whether it's with somebody else, the difference is that if you got a good banker in place, you can actually sign up a much stronger agreement with them because you're going to pay the banker. So they are a consultant to you. So you can set up a much more stronger agreement with them. That's number one. And the second thing is the bankers also know how to negotiate with an incoming investor on confidentiality. Your banker might be able to tell your investor to say that this is what we are saying we have as IP. Give us a term sheet, and once you start the process of diligence, then we will reveal the details to you. So they might be able to negotiate on your behalf to delay sharing the information with a prospective investor, which otherwise, when you are dealing with an investor, and I can tell you all of us are desperate to get money, right? It becomes very hard for us to say no to any investor who asks for any information. We start to think that if I say no, maybe they'll just walk away from the table. The point is your banker would be able to say no to them about certain information which they think is not relevant for the purpose of decision making. And it actually helps you delay some of the confidentiality getting breached. Eventually, you have to be prepared that your confidentiality is going to be breached. Now, whether it is going to lead into something else or not, that's a different story. And I can tell you without naming, there's a pretty large fund. It's a very marquee name in terms of the equity investment companies. They actually spoke to me. They signed a confidentiality agreement with us. They asked me to come present. They asked me for my business model. They did everything under the sun to be able to do this. And eventually, they had one of their employees who has actually taken practically all our business models, and they've set up a competing business. That employee has set up a competing business. This employee had full access to all our information. And the interesting thing is that this fund who I had approached, they actually made an investment into. Okay. In another situation, one of my existing investors, they had an employee who has set up a business which is similar to ours. And this was actually a person who was an appraising officer of everything that we have done. So he's the person who evaluated my business plans, my commercial diligence was done by this particular person. And now he has gone ahead to set up a business on his own, which is a competing business. So I can tell you that at the end of the day, this is how the market is. So eventually, sooner or later, you can expect confidentiality to be breached. Now, the point is, how important is that information for you? For me, like I said, it's finally at the end of the day, execution is everything. It may not be the case in some of your cases. For example, some of the businesses I can tell you, it might even be executed better by somebody else who had a lot more capital. I often kind of think about, let's say, companies like Greentech, which are making super advanced batteries. Now, if their IP was available to somebody like an Amaron or an Excite completely, they could actually execute it in no time. They have the brand, they have delivery capability, they have manufacturing capability, they have everything under the sun. So again, different people have very different kinds of situation. For some people, losing IP could be losing everything, but for some people, losing IP may not be as serious. But you should be prepared for it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Puneet. This is Srini. My question is, should we prefer an angel investor, or should we go in for a institutional investor, something like that? Which one you said? There are a couple of angel investors who want to invest.
Let me come to that, Srini, in a while. I think this is something that I want to address. If you have a choice where you have an angel investor and a commercial investor, and both of them want to invest in you, I think I would say take money from both. If you have no choice, then you have no choice. At the end of the day, more money is helpful. And I can tell you, if you could raise more money once, then you save the time and effort and energy. Equity raise, like I said, is hard. If you raise the money today for 2 rounds equivalent, it is better than raising the money for 1 round at a time. So honestly speaking, if you had if 2 people were kind of pushing you to say, take money, take it from.
Thanks.
Of course, keeping in mind the fact that you still need to have a good investor.
Yeah, one thing is like, how do I evaluate how much should I shell off? What is the equity equivalent?
Let's come to that. I think that was also the question that Santosh asked us. We'll get to that. Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll move on. So these are some of the existential questions. I know that some of these questions were also coming to you, and there are no easy answers to these questions. Why do you need to do equity raise? I think is an easier question to answer. Why is simply because you need the money. When? All the time. I would actually say that one of the roles of the founders is to raise money all the time. I never stop raising money at all. So even if I've closed my previous round as of yesterday, I will be back in the market today to raise money. In fact, I will go to 10 people who told no to me by telling them that, you know what, I raised money. And you know, sometimes the biggest thing that you can do is tell somebody who did not invest in you that, well, somebody else bought the store. And that creates an element of doubt in the person who did not invest in you to say that, oh, maybe I missed something. So you can actually start there. So typically my biggest pipeline is the pipeline that tells no to me in the previous round. I go to them, I start giving them quarterly information, and I start to build a case where they start to feel that it was a mistake. Actually, these are nice guys, we should have invested in them. It doesn't still mean that they will invest in me in the next round. But the point is, I've never really stopped raising resources. I'm doing it every single day. And by doing that, my investor relationships are fantastic. And I keep getting the pulse of the market. I also keep gauging at what stage are these people going to be more likely to invest in. But nevertheless, these are how much, that's a question we will try to address. Who should do it? Banker, yourself, work with, have a junior person being deployed for it. I think these are all important questions, but there are no easy answers for this. I would typically say that if you have a network, if you have the time, if you have a co-founder, do it yourself. If you have neither of these three, definitely go for a bank. And the rest of it is some permutation combination that you can think about. Options. The main options here typically are, largely speaking, angel investors / PE, bootstrapping, friends and family. There are not too many options here. In your case, I think it's fantastic to have RTBI and IIT incubation cell in between, because what it also opens for you is the door for 2 more things, grants and loans. And I can tell you that you should be feeling fortunate that you have access to this. Most of the founders just don't have access to these two. But typically that is where it would be. Let me stop here. I know Srini had a question, and anybody else who had a question as well, please feel free to ask.
Sure. Puneet, thanks for that quick thing. Now, more we hear, the more questions we get. So what you rightly said is like, it's better to take money and keep going, but it's how much risk can we take? Like, because I got an X amount, can I really, get it going? Or do you think like I have to take it little by little and grow it? And I mean, should I go pan-India or suddenly, or should I go in small rounds? How much risk should I take with respect to, the money I'm going to get something?
Yeah, so I think, Srini, this is going to be again an issue of individual business by individual business, right? There are some businesses where one could argue that you already have a sense of everything under the sun. And therefore, the only thing that you need is cash for expansion. You don't need anything else. You know that there is enough market. Once you put in the money, people will come and buy. And all you need is to get to a minimum scale. There are other businesses where I can tell you, and I speak to a lot of teams here, and I know that they haven't really yet got to a level where they know what is the business problem that they're trying to completely solve for and what is the use case that is going to sell. They have great ideas, but they've not yet reached a level of market traction where the market is defined. They're still trying to go and tell the market that this is a product that could actually help meet your needs. I think some of it also comes from the fact that a lot of people who I know here come from engineering backgrounds. So they're actually solving a problem where human beings or some low tech initiative was actually trying to do something. And now they're kind of bringing in a new technology which could change it. And the technology today is not established. Prototypes are just about ready. And at that stage, a lot of them are right now in the doubt to say whether markets exist or don't exist. And therefore, to be able to just take pan India and throwing more money may not completely be proven. So I think it again depends from business to business to business. But two things is what I would say here. If you've created a business plan and you've been able to convince an investor to put in $100 million behind it, and in the business plan, you had already put the plan to say that I'm going to go pan India and my burn rate is going to be this much, by all means, go ahead. You found an investor who liked your vision, liked your idea, saw the business plan, and has done commercial diligence on you to be able to say that all of that has happened. And therefore, you could go ahead. But there could also be an angel or a very early investor who basically puts in $500,000 in. Now, this person has put in $500,000, largely speaking, to see if whatever you've said, you can actually put it on the ground. And if that is very much the case, then your most important thing that I would do will be to bootstrap and make sure that the measures of success that the investor had in mind, you're actually doing better than that. And sometimes timing could go very off. You thought things will happen in 3 months, but the person who you wanted to hire had a notice period of 3 months. And what could have been achieved in 3 months required 3 months for a person to come in before you could even start working. So now you need the same money to last you for 6 months. So frankly speaking, bootstrapping helps. That in a situation like this, where you are trying to pass on indicators to an investor to say, write a bigger check, you should kind of keep the cash flow down to the minimal outflow so that you have a better runway to be able to manage your situation. So I would say that these are the two extremes. Of course, there are lots and lots of intermediate scenarios, right? What happens when you raise $5 million? Do you still blow the money or not? But I think in the heart of hearts, all founders know whether they have a successful product or do they need to make their product successful. So the transition of idea into a successful product is the time when you should open the floodgates. Otherwise, I would say just because somebody else is giving you the cash, don't burn it. Any questions here? I didn't mean to spend too much time here. I know these are largely existential questions. There are no easy answers to these questions. We'll try to address some of this when we talk about the stages and how much to dilute. There, some of this will become more and more easier to understand. But limited point I wanted to do here was to actually kind of tell you that you are not the only one who has these questions. Every single person has these questions. Nobody is sure about the answers. There are no good answers to any of these questions at the end of it. Preparing for an equity raise, I want to run through this before I get to the equity raise and how much to raise, because frankly speaking, I know that all of you are desperate to get money. And therefore, the most important thing that looks like is how do you get there and how much should be the dilution and stuff. But I can tell you that's really, really the kind of the milestone. There is a lot of journey that needs to be completed before you get to the place that you need to get to. So any successful equity raise needs to at least have these 6 elements. And I can tell you that these 6 elements are necessary but not sufficient. But these 6 are super, super important before you can embark on the journey. one has to be a very, very clear articulation of what problem are you solving. And that problem has to be crystal clear. It has to be extremely well defined. And you need to understand the fact that most of your investors may not understand half of the engineering physics that you know. These are people who perhaps may not even have studied science for all. What they basically might kind of bring to the table is an understanding of how to make an investment. You could also be fortunate, for example, to get money from an angel who's a IT pass out and who can actually understand all of the situation that you're talking about. But don't expect that in a kind of as a kind of a norm. Expect that an average investor does not understand this issue. So you have to be able to say what the problem is. For example, the problem that we try to solve at Kaleidofin is, simply put, nobody wants to engage in financial services. Nobody likes the idea of buying insurance, buying mutual funds. Nobody gets excited about posting on Instagram to say, I bought a mutual fund today, or I bought an insurance today. So finance is one of those very low involvement things. At the same time, people can get very excited about buying something as silly as sunglasses or shoes. And people will fill up their entire Instagram and Facebook posts on one new pair of sunglasses. And that's what tells you that people engage in their goals. The goal could be to look nice. The goal could be to get your kid educated. Goal could be to go on a holiday. And what we as Kaleidofin do is basically convert the entire complexity of finance, take it and manage it on our own. But what we really try to do is get the customer to just simply focus on their goals. We don't talk the language of finance. We only talk the language of goals. So the problem that we're trying to solve here is a human problem of saying most people don't like financial services. And I'm sure if you ask this question to your own self, that would you have bought the insurance if there was no compulsion under the taxation, how many of you would have done it? How many of you adequately feel that you're insured? And the answers are going to be pretty challenging. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve. And typically in the statement that we're trying to make, we try to make sure that the listener has also experienced some of this, the challenges of finance, which mutual fund to invest in, for example, which insurance product to buy, which company has the best policy. These are all challenges that most people really, really don't understand. So I think you need to have a good handle of that, and it should be a problem that the person in front of you can relate to. Some people, for example, I see in IT, they have a very clear sense of the problem and it's very easy to understand. I know a group which is working on, for example, mobility for people who are differently able. It's a problem that is very, very well understood. India just does not have very, very good possible options there. And what they have actually designed is fantastic, and it's very easy and intuitive to understand their product. Not everybody in this room has something which is as easy to understand as that. So basically you need to have a very easy handle, very easily explainable concept of what problem are you trying to solve. The next is the business plan. Extremely, extremely important. So what does a business plan basically mean? It basically means that how are you going to do what you're saying that you're going to be doing? How are you going to scale up? A lot of us talk about, oh, we have two people who can make sales of 1 lakh, 10 lakh, 15 lakhs. That's all great. An average investor is thinking about a situation to say that, would you be the next Flipkart? Right? They're not thinking about the fact that, would you make 10 crore rupees in your life? And while the 10 crore ambition might be a great ambition for a lot of us, but I can tell you that's not the ambition for most investors. Most investors want to have a shot at the next Flipkart in this country. And therefore, I think that becomes a super important part for them to start to see that how could you scale? And this, when you start to think about how do you scale, you also start to build your business very, very different. I can tell you in some of the businesses that I see that the founder is the critical resource. The founder is doing the trainings themselves, or the founder is doing the consulting themselves. And the moment you do that, you will find it very, very hard to scale. And I can give you an example of another company, again at IIT Research Park. And I've seen them kind of switching over completely, and it's been amazing to see that. So this is a company called Home Analytics. When they started off, the company basically was one person supported by 3 or 4 junior colleagues, and it basically became that senior resource who was really good at data sciences, trying to build all models, and effectively it was a one-to-one consulting service. Now the point is that for them to get 20 contracts was impossible, simply because how much will this founder do? Will he go prospecting? Will he go marketing? Will he build the models? Will he actually then execute 5 of them or 20 of them? His own capacity was the constraint here. Eventually, I think what he's done is that he's been able to put a lot of his work into a product. He's been able to productize it. Now he's created something which is, I'm forgetting the exact name, but it's something to do with the genie.
Yeah, Genie Insights, I think. Yeah,
Yes.
it is. Yeah.
Right now he's been able to productize it. Now a lot of insights of the founder have gone into it, and now it's a solution that several companies can co-use. And now, because he doesn't need to really work on it on a day-to-day basis, he can actually keep reviewing the algorithm and make Genie Insights better. But it actually gives him time to be able to just market this to 10 other people. And junior resources can make sure that they can actually give all the insights that are required because the algorithm is built at to be able to do some of that stuff. So by productizing now, he's been able to release his bandwidth, and therefore he's been able to grow from the limited number of people that he had to a pretty large team right now. And that, theoretically speaking, could actually go pan-universe. There is no reason for it to be focused only on India. The product could be used by anybody around the world. And I actually start to feel that he's at an inflection point where if he were to raise a certain kind of money, he can actually start to project himself as a company which can actually do this for a lot of people. He needs sales teams, he needs a lot of visibility, and that requires money now. He's in that situation, Srini, that if he raised, to my mind, $50 million, get 2-3 data scientists, get a lot of marketing people, get a lot of B2B business presence to be able to now scale up. I don't know whether he himself feels confident in doing that or not, but his product is brilliant. So now you know that he's reached that kind of a level and situation, and he can, if his business plan is not about doing this, he will never meet the expectations of an investor right now of being able to make the next income. So in some of the cases, we have to start to think about that how can we actually scale this beyond ourselves? How can we actually take it to a much larger scale? And that becomes really, really important to talk about. It's not interesting for an investor to start to think about the fact that in 5 years of operations, you'll build a scale of 5 crore rupees. It might be a great aspiration for all of us, because 5 crore rupees is a lot of money to be able to start to see as a top line for and the bottom line, but not necessarily for an investor. So I think that's an important. The next thing is the pitch deck. Now, a pitch deck means a lot, and it means nothing at the end of the day. It means nothing simply because when you're a startup, your pitch deck is trying to largely put some structure to a conversation. And at the end of the day, it shouldn't be that important. But I can tell you, not all of us are very good in communication. Not all of us can actually make a pitch. Not all of us can cover all the points properly. And that is where the pitch comes as a very, very important. And I can tell you, a lot of investors are typically completely open to the idea of saying that I am going to be meeting an entrepreneur who's not able to explain the idea of it, because they met with several who are never able to explain their ideas. So don't kind of beat yourself up to it if you think that you can't actually make a good presentation. As long as, even if you're making a bad presentation, but you can actually talk about the problem, your business plan, your solution well, and use as many aids as you need. If you think that your best bet is to put a short video of your work, do it. That could be your pitch deck. At the end of the day, you will never raise money unless and until the person on the other side is actually going to be able to understand what your business is about. I can tell you that after making 80 slide decks, after spending hours and hours and hours on a business deck, I have always, and I'm not kidding you, that is one of the reasons why I hate the pandemic. is that my 100% of investors came to me when I met them in a plane, when they were actually getting down from the plane. We were in a bus together, and I made exactly a 2-minute pitch to them about what we were trying to do. And that got them excited. They then came and spoke to us, and then we finally made the investment. I have never ever formally gone to a person who I did not know, cold called, that ever worked. No. Chance coincidence. We met, we knew of each other, some networking had happened, and I used the opportunity to make a pitch, and it's 100%. I cannot tell you one name that did not come from this list in my life. Right? So that 2-minute pitch is also important. And but I can tell you the deck really helps, because after the 2-minute pitch, you will meet, and that's basically where your deck comes in handy. So you need the deck. If you think that you don't need one, you're mistaken. And I can tell you, you can use tools like what I have used here. If you can see my presentation deck here, I made it in exactly 10 minutes, this particular deck. I didn't use PowerPoint. It takes a lot of time to make presentations on a PowerPoint because your slides will go haywire, left, right, all alignment, all sorts of issues. I use this software. It's free for up to 100 slides, and it makes beautiful presentations all the time. You can make very fancy presentations, but at a basic level, all your presentations will look very good. And I can tell you, if you're used to making presentations on PowerPoint, try it once on Beautiful, and you'll at least get a certain kind of visually appealing presentations. They'll be very simple. This is a very simple bulleted list at the end of the day. I haven't done really anything fancy. You go ahead, Srini.
Yes, that was wonderful area, the pitch deck creation, where I'm not good at, but still learning. In that, like, should we relatively present it? Like, for example, mine is an educational product. So people want to correlate and see whether, my product is worthy in the market, or they need to understand it one slide. Can I say, like, can I shooting approach where I can say, like, I'm better than Byju's, or something like I'm better than Educom, or combine these two, I'm unique like this? Which one would be more effective? Or should I talk on my own, saying that, hey, this is all new or all unique, which may throw us all this company away? Something like that makes more sense to the investor.
So I didn't want to cover the pitch deck here today. And I'm happy to do that. What I can also do is I can send you a brief outline of a pitch deck of what kind of makes for a good pitch deck. There are some basic components that need to be there. But one of the key things that you'll find in any pitch deck is going to be market analysis. So what is the market? Who's the competitor? I think it's an important piece to do. If I were to kind of put the competitor analysis, I would typically put it as a very unbiased opinion there. I would point out what is good in my competition, and I will point out what is good in me. I would actually let it at the end of the day for the other person to judge whether I am better than a Byju's or I'm not. At the end of the day, you can actually just put together what is there in terms of what is being offered. What is also important here is to understand what drives value. I can actually tell you that, and maybe I'm wrong here, Srini, maybe I'm saying something super provocative here, but in the name of education, you can actually sell quite a bit of stuff. Okay, half of the stuff that gets sold in the name of education is actually completely useless and worthless. What you're selling is not necessarily the great software. What you're selling is also not necessarily the greatest of curriculum. What you're selling is also not necessarily the best of teachers and the best of way of doing it. What you're selling is really a dream that my kid, after going through this particular program, is going to become somebody, will become something in this world, will become somebody in this world, right? At the end of the day. So you're selling a dream. Now, if you are going to compare your software with Byju's, or if you're going to compare your content with Byju's, or the user experience with Byju's, I would actually say that you might end up losing the investor totally. Because what the appeal for Byju's is not anything else. The appeal for Byju's is that Shah Rukh Khan has managed to tell everybody in the world that Byju's can actually get your kid to do everything, right? White Hat Junior has managed to tell everybody that your kid could actually make 1.25 crores by joining Google. Whether their own people who are kind of doing this make that kind of money or not is a different question. But they are not selling you a coding lesson at all. They're selling you a dream. And today a parent will do anything for that. Half of the financial companies, they create those ads for child plan in which you buy a unit linked insurance policy. You actually, if you go through the policy fine print, for every 1 lakh rupees that you put annually, you actually pay 10,000 rupees as cost to that insurance company. If you are making a return of 10%, your remaining balance was 90. You get to 99,000. You never get to the 100,000. You're not even getting back to your principal easy. But the point is that they are not selling you return on investments. They're selling you a dream here. So again, the idea that I would say is that think about your solution from a multi-faceted point of view, because that's how the investor is looking at it. They're not necessarily looking at only the software, only the content. They're basically looking at what will make you big. And that's basically where you'll be compared.
Great point. Thanks, Puneet. Yes, that helps.
Okay, moving on, networking. How many of you are in a forum where you end up meeting investors? Quick raise of hands, some symbol, something, some share that does something. I don't know what is the best way to do it. I'm not here. I'm not seeing a raise of hands, at least from the people who are on videos. So it sounds like nobody is doing it. But I can tell you it's a bad idea. You need to find forums where investors come in. There is a large ecosystem that Jaya and team have created for you. You will have to network. At the end of the day, your moments will get created when you meet people getting down from the plane when they're approaching the bus. But how do you approach them if you don't know who they are? How will they ever speak to you if they have never met you? Now, I think that becomes important. Sometimes your conversation starter could be, I met you at the demo day at IIT Research Park, and everything else can start from there. So there are demo days that is run, which is fantastic, but please also find opportunities to meet others. There are lots of award functions that happen. There are lots of places where you can put startup rewards. There are a lot of meetups that happen. TI is here. They have something here. You can actually request them to bring in angel investors here for you to be able to meet up, but you have to meet up. There is just no choice. How many of you have a newsletter which goes to your relevant list of investors? Anything that you send out to them on a quarterly basis to say, last quarter we were here, this quarter we are here. Srini, do you have a blog you talked about that you're running an education thing? Is there a parent who can read testimonials to say that I want to sign up?
Yeah, yes, we have a magazine that goes along with it. We run a newsletter. It is kind of, we send a newsletter once in a while. And yeah, we reach people, but not targeting them so far. We are good in sending newsletter though. Yes, we are articulating the things.
That's a great start, but I would say that it needs to go to investors as well. Mm-hmm. Maybe they will never read it, right? Maybe it will just straight away be deleted from their inbox, which is great as well. Because eventually in deleting it, they will take the pause of 2 seconds and they will basically say, this organization has survived for 2 years. They're doing something.
Yes.
Because just sometimes survival could be a good enough indicator for an investor to say that, oh, they haven't gone belly up yet. So at the end of the day, I would say network. Resonance is really important. Use social media as much as you can. Use opportunities. Apply for awards. Apply for recognitions. Don't pay for them, please. When there are lots of opportunities that will come your way where people will write that pay me 30,000 rupees and we will feature you as the top 10 or best 10 in Chennai, best 10 in India, best 10 education startups, don't ever pay. Because once you pay one person, you'll never be covered by anybody without paying. So don't make payments, but keep applying. If nothing else, in the process of application, you'll be pitching with 10 other people, you'll hear at least 10 other ideas. And you'll get to meet 10 investors. 10 investors will hear your pitch at the end of the day because they are the judges. So use these opportunities. Networking is the key. It's almost like saying this is preparation for doing all of this stuff. You just have to do this. That's about it. At the end of the day, it's about how do you make friends without kind of going and networking. At the end of the day, even to meet people, you will effectively need to be at certain firms. So please do that by all means. And then the last one is you have to be diligence ready. By diligence ready, basically what I'm trying to say is that make sure that all your compliances are in order, all your secretarial stuff is in order. Every single document that is relevant to your investment, please put it in a common drive. Create a place where you can have all of these documents. If you use Google, you use Google. People like me, I bought a Microsoft license for myself way back when this is a personal copy which allows me for 5 family members to use Microsoft license, and it came with 1 TB space for 5 people. So that was the place where I created an online folder where every single document went in originally. And then as we became a company, we started to kind of create our own license. We took a Microsoft's Office 365, which came with a facility like this. And now we have a folder which is shared across every single person. So every agreement that we sign, every employee that we onboard, their CVs, their documents, every time we do board meetings, the minutes of those meetings, the notes for those meetings, the filings that we do with MCA, everything goes there. So technically speaking, and I'm not kidding right now, if an investor were to come in and say that I want to run diligence on you now, this second, I actually have to do nothing but to share that folder with them. I can assure you that it may have more information than what they would have asked for, but it will not have less information at all. There is no other document that they could expect that is not there. They might ask me to write notes to say, hey, explain to me the process of doing this, explain to me your training manual in a different way. That I might have to write and create at that stage. But all documents, all agreements, all secretarial stuff, everything is in there. And some of this I can tell you can help you with a lot of bandwidth issues later on. You know that minutes have to be maintained. There is no rocket science about it. We all know that financials have to be done, audits have to be done, and all of that has to be done. Once you do it, just put it in a folder. Just say audited accounts. Keep putting all of that in. When you have your BRSs, your trial balances on a monthly, quarterly, whichever basis, just keep putting in it. Bank statements, just keep putting it in. It's a little bit of discipline to create those folders and just keep putting all of this stuff inside. Right from your memorandum of association to your articles, to your directors, to your list of signatories, to your shareholding patterns. You just have to keep updating at the end of it. You create a folder like this, keep putting everything in there, half of your work is done. And I can tell you, once you've signed the term sheet to getting the money, the biggest part of the challenge is the diligence. You take 2 months to do the diligence, the investor already gets to know that your processes were bad. You are actually creating all these documents now. You didn't have the minutes, you've actually backdated minutes, you printed them all over again. Then they start to do diligence on whether you filed them in time. They will ask for all MCA records. They will ask you to show us emails that this was sent to the board after 7 days, because otherwise you've not met the secretarial standards, right? There will be many more triggers that come. But the moment you share everything, here it is, everything is scanned, everything is signed, everything is here, a lot of the confidence already starts to come. They start to also look at you as a more organized entity. And I can tell you that if you were an investor, if you were to choose between an organized person or a disorganized person and you are putting a $10 million check, who would you choose? You want your founder to be organized, right? Because if this person is not organized, then you know that there could be a lot of things that could go wrong. So this also does become an important part of your diligence exercise itself. And this is not expensive to do by. It just requires discipline and nothing else. You can also create on your calendar 1 hour to say that every single week or every single month, I will spend 1 hour to put all documents in place. All you have to do is think about which agreements did I sign this month. It's not that you're signing 200. So all of that is there. I'm sure IITM has already given you a checklist of compliances. You can actually sit with the compliances calendar and say, done, document file, done, document file, done, document file. It's actually not even an hour's job, honestly. Okay, so stopping here, this is still getting to preparations, and I can tell you that the more you prepare, the better. Okay, so this is an interesting one. Don't get disheartened. I kept saying that equity raise is hard. The challenge is that this is how most people think success happens to others. Right? You basically think that success is kind of you saw something, you got an idea, you basically did a little bit of networking, and then you became big. That's typically how it seems like. Actually, for everybody, this is how success looks like. There is a lot of stuff that is happening, lots and ups and downs, lots of tangles. The good thing is people only see the tail part, which is a straight line, and the arrow part, which is a straight line in the front. And you don't need to really show to everybody everything else that is going on. But trust me, this is everybody's situation. Everybody will fail 100 times. And the good thing about equity raise is that it's not like an election. You don't need 50% votes to win. Right? You can meet 100 investors. You don't need 50 of them to say yes. You just need one person to say yes. If you've lost out with 100 people, there is no reason for 101st person will not say a yes to you. The simple point is you just have to be at it. You just need one person who will buy your story. Just one person who will believe it. At the end of the day, that is what it takes. So just be at it. Just because it is kind of looking difficult, it is becoming frustrating, you don't have the cash at this point of time, it does not mean that others are in a better situation. Everybody is in the same boat as you. In this room, I'm sure everybody is struggling with exactly the same issue. And if this wasn't an issue, I would have been surprised that so many of you would turn up for this particular talk. And it tells you that it's just not easy. It's never been easy for me as well, honestly. It always takes time. So the most important thing is just be at it. Success is a lot about being at it rather than anything else. So this is where I'll try to answer some of your questions that you raised with me in terms of how much dilution and what do we do at different rounds. But before I get into it, any questions till now? Jaya, we're significantly over time, but I just wanted to find out, do we have another 10 odd minutes?
Yes. Please, Puneet. So long as the participants are okay, please take your time.
Okay, so no questions, and move on then.
I have one question here.
Go ahead, Rishabh.
Yeah. So regarding this due diligence, can you please tell what are the documents that are required typically for due diligence?
Rishabh, I'll perhaps cover it separately at some stage, and I'll also send you a checklist that I give investors. I'll send it to Jaya.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah.
And then she can forward it to you. But think about every single document that you can imagine. Everything to do with your employees, everything to do with all compliances. I'm sure you'll have a compliance checklist, which is around all laws, labor laws, companies acts, all filings for that. Any agreement that you've signed, including lease deed with IIT Research Park or anything else, any document that you have with IIT, minutes of the meeting, all of those documents. Basically, there isn't a document that is not relevant from the perspective of due diligence. Financials. Yeah. So coming to different investment rounds. So I think this is classically what most of you will experience. There are, of course, some variations that keep happening here and there. But typically you'll have a pre-series A or the angel investment round. That's typically the first round. It's also called the seed round. Then you have the Series A, Series B, Series C. I've tried to kind of articulate a little bit about what these different rounds mean. So typically there's an angel investor round that happens when you have either got a prototype or you're close to getting a prototype out, but your idea is clear. You have not done any minimum viable product demonstration. So people still don't know whether your prototype will find users or not, but at least you have an idea which is getting closer and closer to a prototype that you can take to the market. At this point of time, most people will not ask you what are your revenues or not. But if you have anything which is above and beyond that, that is a big plus. So for example, if you are going in a pre-series A stage and you can already show that I have revenues and I have all of that, that always is helpful. So if you're better and ahead of the curve when it comes to all these requirements, you of course will get preferred. But that's basically where different kinds of people will come into the picture. So at an angel investment round, typically what you should be expecting is to get just enough money for you to be able to complete MVPs. So your prototype should be in place and you would have gone with the prototype to a few of your customers who would have said, yes, this product makes sense. That's largely speaking the money that you need at the angel investor stage. If you can raise more, that's great. So if you can raise enough money at the angel investor stage that you don't need to raise money at Series A and directly get to Series B, that will be lovely. But most people will not get that kind of a benefit. Most people will have to go through the grunt of going through an angel round, then Series A, then Series B, then Series C. A lot of the work that IIT actually ends up doing with you is it already plays the role of an angel investor. And typically what happens, and this is the part that one has to think about a little bit, is that a lot of the entities during this particular phase, and these are the ones that I find struggling the most, are the ones who've not gotten ready completely to get to a Series A level. They are still at a level where the basic market opportunity is still supposed to be kind of proven. And some of this could happen because the ventures that a lot that at least I see have a pretty long lead of just prototyping work. So in several cases, you could have an easy prototype, but in some cases, you're just doing so much work in prototyping that developing the right device, developing the right product itself could take you well over a year or year and a half in just engineering and putting the prototype together. So I think that typically could become a bit of a challenge, and I feel that some of the entities are in that challenge because they need something which is after IIT has come in, they still need an angel investor or seed investment to come in to see them through on a Series A round. So a lot of you might actually be within that stage of saying that I got some money from RTBI or IIT Incubation Cell, but I'm still not at a level where I'm a Series A entity at this point. So you could be in different stages. Series A, like I said, is, and I'm going to give you a pause after Series A if you have any questions, because I believe most people are going to be within this band. We can spend a lot less time on the remaining series. You get to a Series A when you've done your minimum viable product is there. You have started to show some traction on customers and revenues. Your next round is actually Series A round is still going to be largely driven by the pitch deck. They are still going to be looking at the founder's ability to execute. But one thing that would have happened is that your unit economics would have been validated. So if you believe that your cost of educating one child is going to be this, or your educator can create programs which are 5 in number, or you could actually, let's say, produce one unit which at mass scale will cost you 10,000 rupees, but today costs you 25,000 rupees. All of that you would have actually, mass scale production you might not have gotten to, but you would have gotten to the 25,000, and you could show to people the fact that if I placed a larger order, I could actually do a mass scale production at 10,000. So some of your validation of unit economics would have happened by the time you go to a Series A investor. Typical expectation is that when you're going to an angel round, you're diluting not more than 10%. You could go up to 15, but really not beyond 15 in any form or manner. When you get to a Series A, you dilute typically 25%. So if you've done 10% at Angel, you could dilute another 25% at Series A. That will take your dilution to 35%. At Series B level, you expect to dilute around 20% to around 25%. So at 25% dilution, you could be diluted down to 60%. Um, so you will have a 40% promoter stake at that point of time. If you're lucky, you'll be able to get to 50%. If you're unlucky, you'll be able to get to maybe 35% as promoter stake, and 65% will go by the end of Series B. And that's actually a great situation. Honestly, it's not that bad if you are even at 35% after stage B. Don't think too much about ownership at this point of time. But again, different businesses could have very, very different outlooks. For example, if you are a medtech company, you may need a lot of money at a Series A stage, and you may actually be down to 15% because you don't want to be in a situation where your research is not completely funded. And if you are trying to do something which is a long gestation 3-year research project, you want to raise all the money up front. And then practically you may not need too much in Series B or Series C. So effectively you could very much end at, let's say, 80% dilution and promoter stakes of 20, 25%, 15%, that kind of numbers as well. There are some investors who are very greedy and they will want to take everything. But good investors realize that they should leave enough on the plate with the founders so that they have an interest to continue to keep going. But these are kind of benchmarks. I do want to also add one more thing before I stop and open for questions, is that you can't do a Series A, for example, 5 years after your beginning of the business. Okay, and I'll tell you why. See, the issue is that vintage becomes really important here. So if you go to an investor after 3 years and you're still at a pre-Series A, and let's say your business was not a business where there was a long gestation on prototype creation, then what will happen is your investor will start evaluating you like a 3-year-old business. Okay. And when you have a 3-year-old business, your investors are going to expect that you should have a certain kind of traction in terms of revenues, in terms of customers, in terms of repeat orders. So some of this actually works very nicely if you were to get to, let's say, a pre-Series A in 6 months, Series A by 18 months, Series B by, let's say, latest by 36 or 42 months. If you're doing that, you are not letting time kill you, because otherwise with time comes expectations. If you've just been in business for 5 years, people will want to understand what did you do in 5 years. Now, don't get disheartened if you're already there. I'm just saying that that will be one more battle that you'll have to fight as you speak to investors. So in your story, when you're making the pitch deck, I would already put in the situation to say that what did you learn on those in these 3 years, so that when an investor asks the question, you can just already flip back to the slide and make this person feel like, oh, but they already answered it. So you can preempt some of these in the pitch deck. But the point is the expectations do change. The expectations from me as a 6-month-old company versus a 2.5-year-old company are very, very different. So these things, you should also kind of keep a time running on it. So think of this not only as this is not a test match at the end of the day, right? Think of this almost like a one-day international, but it has sub-targets for you to meet at the end of 10 overs, 20 overs, 30 overs. Think about a rain-delayed match where Duckworth Lewis could be implemented at any point of time. So you don't know whether the match ends at 5 overs, 10 overs, 15 overs. So you're actually going ahead thinking that you always have to be ahead of the Duckworth Lewis method. So think of this as, yes, eventually you need to get to the full score that you wanted to, but also think about the time. People will value the company on the basis of how much vintage you've had. But again, like I said, don't be disheartened about it. All of us kind of miss those timelines. And the good thing, therefore, is it's not always that investors will say that, oh, if you've not done your pre-Series A by 6 months, and if you're not done Series A by 18 months, it's end of the world. A lot of people will not meet these targets. But if you are meeting some of these targets, it will be beneficial. If you're able to do these things fast, it always helps. So let me stop here and see if there are any questions for me at this point.
Hi Puneet, Jagdish here.
Go ahead, Jagdish.
Yeah. So I have this confusion. So we are in this pandemic, we were able to build a hybrid model. Earlier, we were taking face-to-face workshops. During pandemic, we built an online module which worked pretty well. Till this point, it's going good, and I can see the shift happening now. Parents are like neither online or they are offline. It's like there's a shift, but it's slowly changing now. So I thought of taking loan to keep myself confident, or I can other side I can able to pull investment if I pitch to someone. So if taking loans will anyway affect the investor investment. Taking loan from IIT or bank will affect the investment anyway.
Yeah, so Jagdish, quickly, if I've understood it correctly, if you have an opportunity to do between loan and equity, there are two parts to it, right? One part is I like loans simply because it does not lead to dilution. At the end of the day, you need to basically make sure that you're not getting diluted, and every percentage that you save for yourself could become super huge beyond a point. Look at an entity like Unifor, it's 1% today, super value. So think of yourself that all of you need to think of yourselves as entities which could get to a level where every 1% could actually make or break futures. You could actually give 1% to your employee and your employees could retire rich if things of this could materialize. So I like debt only for that reason. But I can also tell you that some of the, in a startup world, taking any interest cost could also be a significant burden at this point of time. So I'll tell you why I like equity. So if I were to raise money and I have raised 10 crore rupees, let's say, and if I'm able to put in those 10 crore rupees in the bank as equity, and this is like a $1.5 million check today, it's not a very, very large check. Today, there are entities like Sequoia who would invite you for a accelerator program. And if they like you, they will actually give you a $1.5 million as seed equity round if they like your idea per se. So let's say you've raised the 10 crores. You put it in a bank account, you're still making on mutual fund investments itself, you're making around 50 to 60 lakh rupees per annum on that particular money. And the interest that you get on putting this money in the bank itself becomes interesting. But the point is, are you able to raise the 10 crore rupees? On the other hand, you borrow, let's say 50 lakh rupees. And even at that 50 lakh rupees, and the good thing is IIT offers a fantastic rate of interest. I would take that money any day. But if you were to go to anybody else, even a bank like an SBI, typically their funding will be at 14-15% cost. It will not be at sub 10% cost at all. The moment you take money at 15% at 50 lakh rupees, you have a ongoing burden of servicing 7.5 lakh rupees as interest cost alone. Forget about principal. And in the starting stage, you need all the money to be able to invest in the company. If you are making the money, and you could return, for example, the 10 lakh rupees as installment and 7.5 lakh rupees as interest, you are giving out 17.5 lakh rupees. But that 17.5 lakh rupees could actually be used to hire 5 other people for you, or 4 other people, or 3 other people for you, who could actually do a lot more and could scale up business. So that's the reason why I don't like loans very early on, because servicing of the loans would be very complex. Now, if the loan is structured as a convertible, where you don't have to pay money back, but when they get equity later on in life, they will, let's say, charge you the full 50 lakh rupees and 15% rate of interest on it when you convert. That's fair point, because you've not paid cash for it. The investor has, at the end of the day, taken equity. You got the money as loan for the first 3 years, which means that you did not dilute too quickly. You diluted at your future value that you created, but the investment did not look like 50 lakhs. The investment now looked like 50 lakh rupees plus rate of interest at 15%.
Till this point, we never had any loans. We still run bootstrap, and we had a grant from IIT Incubation Cell. And we are planning to scale up to 5 more districts. And the online program all over India, we had 8-country traction till this point. So I'm actually actively looking for investments for a large, say at least 1.5 crores. So at this point, even I'm just confused about taking loans because it should not become burden on the other side.
So don't think of this as burden per se. I think the important part is going to be just that. If you're generating cash flows and you can pay the loan, please do. Okay. But at the same time, if there is a way in which you feel that you needed that money to be able to make future investments also, so you can, for example, in the interest and the loan servicing, you could have opened 2 more districts, then you know that the loan is actually slowing you down. But if you have no other option right now, nobody else is giving you equity right now, I would take the loan, no questions asked, because at least I get to the 5 districts. It's a matter of choice, right? If you have choice, you can do a lot of things. If you don't have choice, then you do what you get at the end of the day.
Yeah. We have reserved for a few months. Okay, let me maybe try because the government orders also came now. So let me put few more advertisements to pull in clients like students, children. So maybe I'll actively pitch for equity.
Trust me, don't wait for too long. I'll tell you why. See, you have buffer right now, which basically means that you can actually run for a few more months. But if you take the loan right now, you will also generate more income, more traction, more brand building, more customer testimonials. Your ability to raise money after 5 months might be better than what it is today. So sometimes delaying may not be a good idea. Sometimes you may want to be decisive to say that I know it's suboptimal. I did not want to do interest servicing. And I can again tell you, IIT is again wonderful in this regard. You will get moratoriums, which also means that at least for the first few months, you'll still be able to build your business before you have to start to pay. I've reasonably seen that in most things, there is some kind of a moratorium there, which is already in place. So a lot of the services that Incubation Cell offers to you is designed very well, keeping in mind the interest of the founders. A typical bank would never do. So if it's a loan from an IITMIC, I wouldn't kind of think twice before. Don't defer these things too much. Sometimes scaling up could be much more important than anything else.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi Puneet, I have a question here. In fact, couple of quick questions here. The first question is, you talked about gestation. So roughly, how exactly can we decide that this should be a gestation period and all those kind of things? And the second question is, how much equity dilution should be okay for a pre-seed or a pre-angel round?
So I think the gestation period really depends on your different kinds of businesses. Right? There are some businesses where you just don't need anything at all. You can just practically start. There, your initial setup time is very, very little. In some, you will just have a lot of startup time. Rishabh, unfortunately, I don't know which business line you're in, so I'm not able to kind of completely frame my question accordingly, my response accordingly. But there are businesses where you may need to develop a prototype, which itself takes a lot of time. And therefore, your gestation time just becomes very, very large. And there are businesses which are more like trading. You can actually start it off tomorrow without too much of a challenge. And there the gestation time could be very little. You may have to develop an app, and once you have an app in place, you can actually start and go ahead. So it depends really. It's going to be very much on a case-to-case, business-by-business basis. So that's actually hard to quantify. On a pre-series A or in the angel round, I would say 10 to 15% dilution is pretty common. So don't get worried about it if your dilution is getting up to those levels. A lot of good angel investors will not take 10%. They will actually even tell you that, no, I'll do sub 10, I'll do 5%. because they also realize that if the promoter ends up losing too much stake too quickly, then it becomes a challenge. Also, a lot of angel investors start to realize that sometimes by giving a higher valuation to the company in an early situation also starts to create a benchmark for valuation for future rounds. So sometimes angel investors are also pretty happy to give you a much better valuation than what the market would. But there are all kinds, Rishabh. I have seen angel investors who practically offer what I would say in quote unquote is vulture capital, not even venture capital. They would want to practically take away everything that you have. So you have vultures and you have angels. You just have to, I think, figure out whether you got a true angel or not.
Thank you, Puneet. But in fact, my second question was regarding the pre-seed round or pre-angel.
So pre-angel round, I don't know what that means. I actually feel that that's your money.
Okay.
I think he's asking something in the lines like what I had asked, sir. I mean, like at a concept stage, how much would you dilute it?
But that's to my mind an angel round, no? If it is at a concept level itself, you got somebody else to invest in you. That is an angel round. That's what happened in my case. I had a concept, I had a presentation, and the famous Amitabh Bachchan, Shashi Kapoor dialogue. मेरे पास ना ऑफिस है, मेरे पास ना कुछ और है, मेरे पास सिर्फ बिजनेस प्लान है. So I have no office, I have no employees, I have no customers. Only thing that I have is a pitch deck. That's basically what I had at some point. So when I got an investor at that point of time, this investor was an angel investor. They basically looked at me and my co-founder and said that these are people who could build the business. And I diluted the number that I'm talking about. I diluted around 6% in that round. 3 people put in small check sizes into that entire transaction. And that became my angel round.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your experience, sir.
No worries. And Santosh, please call me Puneet. Don't call me sir. We are all equals. We are all founders, and I have a lot of respect for all founders. And this is wonderful to kind of meet all of you here. So,
Sure.
Puneet, very quickly, I need to go start off another session for our MedTech incubator. So I'll just drop off for about 10 minutes and then rejoin. But in the meantime, please let the conversation continue, and I'll kind of put it again. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm done. I have no other slides to project really, so I'm really done. But if there are any questions,
but I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. So let the conversations continue. I'll just join back, and Kalyani will handle. Okay, Puneet, I'll be back.
Hi, Puneet. Arun here.
Hi, Arun.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, what is the different approaches for diluting the equity? What are the different ways while not talking to the investors? Because initial period, the number of shares will be very less. Right. So, paid up capital approximately assume that it's a 1 lakh. While talking to the investors, we have to talk in terms of the maximum share value we can talk to them.
Yeah, sorry, Arun, your voice was breaking in between. I don't think I've heard your question completely, but if I were to rephrase, tell me if I've understood it correctly or not. So you're basically saying in the initial round, you have only 1 lakh rupees of capital. So what are the options of raising capital and how will you structure the capital?
Yes. What is the different ways of diluting the equity in the initial period?
With different what of diluting the equity?
Different approaches for diluting the equity.
So I don't completely understand what you mean by different approaches, but typically what will
like some of the investors asking in terms of par value while investing the company. Some investors ready to in terms of premium share value. So which is the best way to go for the investors?
Sure.
Convertible bonds, something like that. No?
Yes, yeah. That's what what are the different approaches?
Understood. So that's basically structuring. That's what I meant by structuring. So you can actually structure your equity in different forms. You can give to people straight shares, or you can give people convertibles. These could be convertible loans, or they could be convertible debentures, or they could be preference shares. So there are different kinds of options available here. Each one of them has its own pluses and minuses. But largely speaking, you can offer shares, straight shares or convertibles. I think these are the two large instruments that get used in the market. I would tell you that straight shares nobody issues right now in the market.
Yeah.
Most people will issue only convertible preference shares, which convert into equity. And their price could be determined now, their price could be determined in future. But most people will offer only convertible preference shares to you now. They will take 1 or 2 equity shares just for being a part of AGMs. But other than that, it will be only convertible structures. Now, these convertible structures are again could be of 2-3 kinds. Like I said, one could be where your value is determined today, where somebody tells you that your valuation is X and it's completely clear. And the only way in which this valuation will change is if a new investor comes at a valuation which is lower than X. Okay. There are others where people will not give you the valuation of X. People will actually tell you whatever is your valuation in the next round, I will get a valuation based on your next round valuation. And whatever is your valuation, I will get shares at a discount of 10%, 20%, 30%, or some such. Some of these discounts could also be annualized. That for every year I'm an investor, I need a 20% discount. So there could be some of those in which the price is not fixed, only the quantum is fixed and the discount rate is fixed. So typically these are the approaches that are most commonly used in this regard. Now, when you don't worry too much about the 1 lakh rupee share capital, that means actually very little. The most important thing is the valuation that people give to you. So let's say somebody is willing to give you 50 lakh rupees. Okay. They will typically tell you that I want to take shares worth 50 lakh rupees and I want to take 6% of the company, or let's say 10% of the company. So if they're taking 10% of the company by giving you 50 lakh rupees, then the company's value is straight away 50 lakhs times 10. The company value is being valued at 5 crore rupees. Okay. And therefore, shares worth a lakh rupees are now being valued at 5 crore rupees, which means your per share value has jumped from 10 rupees to 500 rupees per share. That's basically what the implication of that is. But in most cases, the 100 rupees or the lakh rupees is not relevant. The only thing which is relevant is that how much money is coming in and what percentage of dilution is happening. So that's typically how it will be, how the dilution works and how this is going to be structured by various investors.
So is there any maximum limit for premium share value? Like
No,
example,
not at all.
yeah.
Doesn't matter at all.
Doesn't matter at all. Okay.
Authorized capital, no? That means your authorized capital and something like that.
No, that still doesn't determine the premium. See, what is going to happen is, let's say authorized capital is a lakh rupees right now, and you already put a lakh rupees, which means that you can't even raise a single rupee right now. So if somebody is putting in the money, you will now have to increase the authorized capital in order to raise the money. So at that time, you can increase the authorized capital. But there is no limit to share premium of any type. There used to be a company which was listed on Bombay Stock Exchange at some point of time, Phoenix Mills, at some stage. Its 10 rupees share used to trade at 24,000 rupees. It had a premium of some 23,000 rupees at some stage. And then, of course, they issued bonus shares and blah, blah, blah to bring down the value overall. But premium could be anything. It doesn't have to be, there is no cap on it. The most important thing is the valuation discussion between you and between you and the investor.
Because if you give initial period is a higher premium value, if you're going for next round, the premium value will be decreased almost 50%. Is there any side effect on the company for going forward?
Of course there is. See, for example, what will happen is, let's say you were valued right now at 5 crore rupees, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Company at this point in time. Let's say a new investor comes in and says that I will value you at 3 crore rupees. Okay. Now, typically, your share agreements will have a clause that the older investor also will be reset to the value of 3 crores. So your older investor also will get more shares. So basically, they put 50 lakh rupees on a 5 crore investment, and therefore they got 10% then. Now it will become that they got 50 lakh rupees on a 3 crore value, and in the process, they will end up getting some 17% of the company. Therefore.
So this will be affecting only up to Series A, or otherwise is it even after when you are going to Series A to Series B, then that also will affect?
So it depends on how this is structured. Your agreements will have these clauses. What I'm talking about is something which is called a full ratchet. And this is like a full anti-dilution. And there is something called a weighted average dilution, anti-dilution. What I'm talking about is a full anti-dilution. In some cases, you could have a weighted average and anti-dilution right. In some cases, these rights fall off after Series A. Some cases, they never fall off. So these are all very different concepts. And this is where your shareholders agreement will come into as an important point. And I think that's an interesting topic in its own self to start to think about how and what clauses to sign in the shareholders agreement and what clauses never to sign in a shareholders agreement. So for example, just in terms of this anti-dilution, instead of taking a full anti-dilution, if you take a weighted average anti-dilution, that itself makes a huge difference to your dilution overall. But like I said, some of these things come into stage when you are doing a shareholders agreement. So happy to kind of look at that separately as a session. We can speak to Jaya and try to set it up as a separate session itself. I haven't seen a standard agreement. If all of you typically end up signing a standard document, we can look at that and we can analyze that particularly.
How did you initially start the valuation? This thing, in the pre-series, angel valuation.
Sorry, I'm not able to hear you very well. Can you just repeat your question?
The valuation is being discussed in the pre-series, the angel round itself, or otherwise, usually it will be left to Series A, and people will say that, okay, I'll take a discount or something like that.
I have seen both actually. And I have seen the valuation is left as a discount to the next round. And I've also seen the valuation is discussed and agreed to. I have also seen structures where there's a discount, but there is still a maximum value put. So for example, some investor might say that I will get shares which are at a 20% discount annualized to the next round that you do. But I will still get a minimum shareholding of 6% in the company. So if you have got a very, very good price, and because of which, let's say the shareholder would have gotten down to 2% as a number, that would not happen. They will get a minimum of 6%. But if you got a poor valuation in the next round, because of which you have to give them 15%, it could very much be that. So I've seen both of these cases. I've seen people who have put in money on the basis of discounts and people who have kind of already articulated the valuation properly.
But usually, the angel round, there is valuations are not discussed because we do not have any revenue structure and everything. So valuation is very difficult to decide.
So the point is that if you were to ask me genuinely, I would tell you that valuation to put on most companies before Series B is very difficult. Even Series A valuation is very, very hard because the revenues have just started to come in. The validation of unit economics, like I said, is not accurate because you're still working on prototypes and you know that mass production will bring down the cost quite dramatically. So a lot of the dilution actually is put on the basis of saying that I want a target stake rather than the value of the company. So somebody might say that my target stake is 10%, and therefore I'm giving you a valuation that I want to leave with the promoter 90% by the end of the period. And therefore, by giving out 50 lakh rupees, I want 10%. So you could have very much that kind of a situation. It could be completely built on your target stake that you want to give to the promoters.
Hi, this is Kalyani here from the incubation cell. Just wanted to do a little time check here. It's 5:45 and we know we requested Puneet sir for time till 5:30. So if there are any more questions, can we connect them to you, Puneet sir, offline, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. Very happy to.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you very much for doing such an engaging session with us. You've taken us through equity dilution as well as different rounds of funding and all the basic details here. And I'm sure it was engaging from the kind of questions or the number of questions that kept coming in. So once again, thank you so much. Thank you, participants, for staying through the session and engaging with the speaker as well. We will be sharing a feedback form with you. Request you to fill in and share it with us. And is it okay if we share your email ID with them as well, Puneet?
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, all right. So we'll share his email ID as well. So thank you for staying this long. Yeah.
Thank you, Kaleidofin. The pleasure was mine, and always happy to help. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Puneet.
Thank you, Mr. Puneet.
Thank you. Pleasure was mine.